Good evening, everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. And I know the text I put up for this video is a little long, a little bit to read there. So I hope everybody will take the opportunity when the video is done here to go ahead and read that information and read it carefully, because everything that we talk about in the transportation codes, traffic codes, they're all synonymous with commerce and trade. Commerce is synonymous with transportation, traffic, and trade. Transportation is synonymous, of course, with commerce, traffic, and trade. Traffic is, of course, synonymous with transportation, commerce, and trade. And trade is, of course, synonymous with commerce, transportation, and traffic. And so when we look at this stuff, and we see this thing called the economic substance doctrine, and immediately it starts talking about common law. Common law, and then we see another word in there called transaction. And so first we'll discuss the thing that's mentioned in there. I said trade and traffic and transportation and commerce are all synonymous. When we look at the motor vehicle operator's lease, we see the very last thing in a requirement for a driver's license is a penalty under statement, or a statement under penalty of perjury, stating that you intend to use a, quote, vehicle, specifically at least 50% of its use for trade or business. So the first thing we're going to look at is trade or business, and we see under trade or business, it states specifically that it's for people that hold public office. And the placement of it and the specific use of people that hold public office in regards to the term trade or business means that the only people that are required to have a driver's license are those that are in public office. Now, what I want you to comprehend here, too, is that a driver's license is different than a commercial driver license. A driver license is known as a resident driver license, and they are a resident because they're a government official. They reside within the government, and so they partake of the privileges. And it's a privilege to have a driver's license, and it's a privilege to drive. Or excuse me, it's a privilege to drive, and therefore it's a requirement to have a driver's license. Okay, so when we see trade or business, and we see that it's meant strictly for public people that hold public offices, we comprehend that it's different via a driver license. And like I said, commercial driver license. Commercial driver license is somebody that's in contract with a government office, a public office, to do commerce for them, so that they don't have to. That's a commercial driver license. And for the welfare of the people, it's necessary to have a distribution system, a distribution of goods and services. And that's what a driver's license is for distribution. Okay. Now, when we see these police officers out here on the roads acting as pirates, that's exactly what they're doing, because they're not distributing anything. And therefore, they don't need a driver license in that aspect, and they're operating on a private entity basis, and therefore they also don't need a driver license on that aspect, because they're not specifically performing commerce on the public roadways. They're entering into contracts and drawing you into their commercial venue to construct the contract in a trust form. Okay? So then we go, so understand, trade or business is specifically for people that hold public offices, and that's for the driver license. The commercial driver license is for those private individuals who wish to do business with that government for commerce on the public roadways as a living, to make a living. Okay, so now we're going to talk about transactions. And if you again look in the text in the post, I'm hoping you guys will read it after you're done, and read the part about transaction. It's 26 of the United States Code 7701 section 45, where it talks about non-recognition transaction. In reference to the economic substance doctrine, we're talking about, like I said, common law. And in common law, you don't have to deal with commerce. You deal with trade, an even barter system. Equal consideration is equal consideration by the mind and not by some commercial paper that somebody else, a third party, offered up to use for your agreement purposes. You don't have to use that. So that's a non-recognition transaction if you're just bartering one item for another. Even if you're bartering your services for Federal Reserve notes, that's still a non-recognition transaction, because you're not giving information away to a third party about your transaction. You're freely making an agreement with another man, another live being face to face, and you're verbally constructing that agreement. And you don't have to write it down. So think about this stuff and realize that when we're dealing with these codes and stuff, you have to comprehend how to put them together. And again, so like I said, I hope you will read the text of this video when you get done, and realize that everything done through the codes is for an economic substance. And under the doctrine of economic substance, there has to be a recognizable transaction. Now, the only way they can recognize it is if you give them the correct information. And the correct information they're looking for is when they ask you questions and you give them some kind of information. Quit giving them information. Shut the fuck up. Seriously. If you're going to give them the correct information, throw the information that they put out there right back in their face and say, well, this doesn't follow the economic substance doctrine. Because, see, specifically, you're asking me to perform trade or business when I don't hold a public office. You're specifically asking me to provide a penalty under statement, or a statement under penalty of perjury, that I hold public office and am qualified to conduct trade or business for the government when I'm not. And so when we look at section 77001 subsection H, where it lists the motor vehicle operator lease, and I've discussed this many times, that statement under penalty of perjury says that you intend to use a motor vehicle at least 50% of its use for trade or business. When you look at trade or business, it specifically means that you hold a public office and you are performing for a government commercially through transportation, traffic, commerce, and trade. If you're not performing within their commercial system and you're just making an independent barter separate from their commercialized institutions, then there's no recognition. They're two different jurisdictions. And just like we hear about when we go into court and we're not presenting ourselves properly because they can't hear us, they can't see us, it's a different jurisdiction, we're not in the right jurisdiction, that's exactly what it is. So look at this stuff and realize this is how simple it gets. When you look at the motor vehicle operator's lease that I posted there, you'll see the very last thing under Section D. It says lessee must not know that the certification is false. And that certification process is a lease agreement, whereas you register a automobile on one side of the register, and on the other side of the register it's taken in, it's acquisitioned as an acquisition. It's a military acquisition. And they have acquisitioned it for a military government for its use to conduct commerce, and they are leasing it back to yourself under the pretense that you are going to make a statement under penalty of perjury when you get your license, saying that you will drive for trade or business at least 50% of the use of your motor vehicle. And all you got to do is let them know that's false. I don't intend to conduct trade or business for a government that requires me to hold a public office. I have not taken an oath of allegiance to the United States. Therefore, I cannot follow that federal code. That would be against the law. That would be subverting my own beliefs by following an economic substance of a written law. So think about this stuff, people, and realize, again, this goes back to the video I spoke of the other day in regards to extrinsic, intrinsic values. What's your par value? Are you going to base it upon the truth as portrayed in truth? Certification is false. I never made no such statement under penalty of perjury, and nor would I, because I would be lying, because I don't hold a public office. I cannot do that. Therefore, I must assert that the certification is false, always was false, and always will be false, because I am disqualified from holding public office. Public office means that I have to hold a title in a certain system, a commercial system. And I can't do that. I can present myself as a man that speaks on behalf of other people and do my best to portray the truth as I see it, but I could never convey it the way they see it. I don't know how they conduct their affairs. I don't know if they consider themselves as partaking in an occupation, a trade or business. I barter. So, and this the importance of this video here, I want to stress again, like in a lot of my videos, is the definitions of the words that they use. I was pointing out to someone earlier, when you look up in the United States Code, anytime you see the words Puerto Rico, we always think about the birth certificates being held in an account in Puerto Rico. And when we think about the words Puerto Rico, of course it stands for Puerto Rico. Well, we know Puerto stands for port of Rico. What's Rico? Well, when you look in the United States Code, every time you see those words put together, Puerto Rico, they will be different. They would distinguish them stylized differently. On the internet, when you look it up in the Cornell Code, you'll see that Puerto is in black. Rico is highlighted in blue and underlined in blue, and it's a way to symbolize that there's a link there, so that if you click on it, it will take you to another window that pops up. Click on Rico. Whenever you find it in the United States Code, click on Rico. It will be blue highlighted, underlined. Click on it. It will take you to the exact same link. It's the Rico statutes. So when they define Puerto Rico, they're telling you Puerto Rico, the birth certificate account is fraud. It's a Rico fraud. Anytime you participate in that person as a private man, when you're not when you don't hold public office, you're yourself unknowingly, unwittingly involved in RICO violations, human trafficking, trafficking of persons, without the privilege of doing so that is qualified by an oath of office for the United States. You've not pledged yourself properly according to their own system to be an officer of the corporate United States. And therefore, you cannot possibly be required to have a driver license. If you really just look at the words and see that. Motor vehicle operator leases, it's defined in the tax code of the federal code, and it's for public offices, all which extend from the federal government and state government. So thereby your state driver license requirements, which follow federal guidelines, are also under the same thing. And like I said, on one side of the register, it's a registration. On the other side, it's a private registration. On the other side, it's a public acquisition. You've just transferred your private automobile to the public side. Okay, you've prepared it for its use. Now you have to determine its intended use. And like I said, in the motor vehicle operator's lease, it's required for all motor vehicle operators. Whether you be a driver license, whether you be qualified under that as through a driver license or a commercial driver license, you have to provide a statement under penalty of perjury of your intent to use it for trade or business. So you can use it, say you're a commercial operator, you can use that truck to provide commercial business for the United States, at least 50% of its use, as long as the other 49% of its use or less doesn't matter. So you could technically use it for your own private use of commercial transactions, bartering and trading on the public roadways, being a non-recognition transaction. So even with a commercial driver license, you can still use the public roadways through non-recognition transactions. That's what your right to travel is. You have a right to travel freely, uninfringed, no matter what your affairs be. There has to be some kind of joinder between yourself, whether they be personal affairs or business affairs. There has to be some kind of commercial or contractual joinder with yourself and the United States in order for them to then turn around and require you to have a driver license or a commercial driver license. There is a distinct difference. So again, people, take a look at this post, watch this video, and remember, I do this, guys. I only do this for you guys. If it weren't for you guys, I wouldn't be doing this. God bless you. Have a great night. Bye.